Hello everybody, today I'm going to help you to understand better the reflecting and refracting. So the reflecting, when the ray of light is hit the surface and then it's reflected from the surface, it's like this. We measure the reflecting and refracting data from the vertical axis, which is perpendicular to the surface. So the data one, so this one is the ray of beam which is hit the surface. So the data initial is this data. And the data of reflecting data is this data. This one is data of the reflecting. So these two datas are equal to each other. So data initial is equals by data R. So the data of the angle of the ray which is hit the surface, it's the same as the data as the angle of the ray which is reflected from the surface. So these two datas are equal to each other. So it's in this when two rays when the ray is reflecting ray, when in the when the both ray, the ray which is hit the surface and the ray which is reflected from the surface, both are in the same plane and normal to the surface. And second one, when the initial angle and angle of the reflecting are equal to each other. So this is a reflecting. The second one is refracting. So okay. So the second one is refracting. Now, what's the refracting? Again, when we have a surface and the ray is hit the ray of the light hit the surface, and then when the ray of the light and the ray of the light and refracting ray are not in the same plane, and then this is a ray of light which hit the surface and then it goes in other side of the surface. It's like this. So this one is the refracting ray. This one is a ray which has hit the initial ray which has hit the surface. This is a refracting ray. So when the two rays, the initial ray and the refracting ray are in different surfaces, but for reflecting, the initial ray and the reflecting ray are in the same surface and normal to this surface. Now for this ones, again, we say that for reflecting and refracting, we measure the angle from the vertical axis which is perpendicular to the surface. So vertical axis is this axis and is perpendicular to the surface. We measure the angle with respect to vertical axis. So the initial angle here would be this angle, and the angle of the reflection would be this angle. So these two angles are not equal to each other. For reflecting, the data, the initial angle and reflecting angle are equal, but for refracting, the initial angle and refracting angle are not equal to each other. So now, we have two surface. We have the one surface here, and we have one area here and one area under the surface. We have two sides. This is our surface. We have two sides. This is side 1, this is side 2. Side 1, it's the side where the initial ray is hit the surface. That's the side 1, and this one is side 2. Here again, side 1 here, side 2 here. Now, we have we have for refraction, we have a index refraction. Now, what's the index refraction? Index refraction is a constant number for each side of the surface. So index refraction, it's index refraction is n, and it's equal by c over v. Now, what's the c? C, it's the c is the speed of the light. C is the speed of the light, and c is equals by 3.8 times 10 to the 8 meter per second. This is the speed of the light. Okay, now the index of each surface are different. The index of surface 1, the area 1, and the surface 2 are different. So we say that the N1, it's the index refraction for the surface which the ray it's hit the surface, and N2, it's the surface where the ray is refracted. So here we say this side is N2 and this one is N1. Okay, now if that surface, the area where if the ray is hit the surface in the vacuum, if the area is vacuum area, so N of the vacuum, it's 1. N of the vacuum is 1. So the smallest index refraction is for vacuum, which is 1. And then N for air, it's 1.0003. And N index refraction does not have any units, because for C, it's the speed of the light, it's meter per second, and V is the velocity of the ray at that surface, which means for this portion, when I want to find N1, I should find the velocity of this ray, the ray which has hit the surface, and the speed of the light should be divided by the velocity of this ray, and I got the index refraction. So this is the velocity of the initial ray, so it's meter per second, so we got 1 here. So N index refraction does not have any units. So the smallest index refraction is for vacuum. Now, if I want to find the velocity, the V, the sum of the index refraction are constant, like N of the vacuum, N of the air, N of the gas, but some of them we need to find the index refraction. So we have C, so we need to find V. For finding V, V is the velocity of the ray. For this one, for N1, velocity of this ray. For this portion, for N2, we should find the velocity of the refracting ray. So for finding the velocity is wavelength times frequency. So we should have the wavelength of the ray of the light, and frequency of the wave of the light to find the V, and then we plug into N equals by C over V, and then we can find the V. Okay, so this is a refraction and reflection. Now, I want to talk more about the angles of the refracting. The angles of the reflecting are equal, but the angles of the refracting are not equal. So now I want to talk about the angles of the refracting. Okay, so we have one angle which is called critical angle. Now, what's the critical angle? Okay, so critical angle is theta critical equals by sine inverse of n to the index of index 2 over index 1. So when we find a critical angle, now what's the critical angle? Now we talk about the critical angle. Okay, so when we have, this is our surface, and this is a vertical axis, which means it's the perpendicular to the surface, and we measure the angles with respect to vertical axis. Now, when the ray of light, which is hits the surface, now our ray of light can hit the surface from this side, can hit the surface from this side. The ray, which is in this direction, it goes to the goes into the surface. That's the initial ray. And the ray which is out of the surface goes out of the surface. That's the refracting ray. Now, the initial ray can hit the surface from this side. Okay, so now this is our initial ray. This is our initial ray, which has hit the surface. Now, if it's if the angle between the angle of the initial ray with respect to vertical axis is equals by critical angle, which we find the critical angle. Now in this case, N2 and 1 is this side, because we say index 1 is the surface, index refraction, and 1 it's for surface, which is the ray it's hit the initial ray, the hit the surface, and N2 it's the for surface, index refraction for surface, which the ray is refracted. Now, if the initial angle, which is this angle, if the initial angle it's equals by critical angle, which we find the critical angle sine inverse of N2 over N1. We got the critical angle. If the initial angle equals by critical angle, in that case, the refraction ray would be the angle of the refraction would be 0. Okay, so the angle of the refraction would be 0 if the initial angle, so if it's this, we got this. If the initial angle is equals by critical angle, which we got, the refraction angle would be 0, which means it would be parallel to the surface. So the refraction angle, it would be like this. Okay, if the initial angle is equals by critical angle. Now, if the initial angle is less than the, okay, now again, this is a vertical axis, which is the vertical axis, which is perpendicular to the surface. Now, if the initial angle is less than critical angle, in that case, the ray, it will be reflected with not 0 angle. So it will be reflected like this. And then this would be theta r, the reflection angle. Okay? Now, if the angle, okay, now if the initial angle it's greater than critical angle, okay, now if its initial angle is greater than critical angle, in that case, the ray will not be refracted, it will be reflected. Okay, in that case, it will not be refracted from the surface, it will be reflected from the surface like this. And this would be the data are. Okay, so for today we learn about reflecting, refracting, and critical angle. For the next video, I'm gonna post a bunch of questions about these things, and if you have any question, you can write in comments. Thank you for watching this video.